Hi. Yeah, so a lot of you may know me or have seen me before. I do these talks often, and every single time I get up here, it's as if I'm doing it for the first time, so excuse the nerves. I'm going to start off with a story. I don't give you usual talks. My wife and I, we were in Japan. We landed in Osaka. And we're walking through the airport, and I see this yellow grid light structure throughout the airport. I get on the train, head into Kyoto, and I'm still seeing this grid light structure everywhere. And, you know, the squares themselves that have the dots on them, I recognize those. We have those here in the States. We add them to our curb cuts. When I first saw curb cuts, I thought that the dots or the ridges were there for traction, prevention from slipping, because a curb cut slopes down. I grew up in the Midwest. We have snow. Kind of makes sense. You don't want to slip as you're going down this ramp. No. Curb cuts are there for accessibility reasons. This is also before I became an accessibility specialist, when I realized that these were there. But here in the States, we don't set them up like this. There's a grid pattern. So one of the things that I knew about Kyoto going in is that they do not have public trash cans. So as you're walking around the streets, you don't see trash out. Now you may see like a cigarette butt here and there, but they have people that come through and clean up. But you actually do not physically see a trash can. So my initial thought was, because they're so big on automation over in Japan, that they had automated trash pickup and that these were tracks that the robots followed. Because I had never seen tracks laid out like this. The vertical lines and the horizontal lines, they are definitely tracks. So it looks like something would sit on it. When you get to the corner bits, where they're knobs, it allows the grid to go either left or right. That's the way that I saw it. Even as we're walking through the streets, there they are, all over the sidewalk. And then I started digging into them. I'm like, there's got to be something else going on with these. They can't just be for automation and robots. They're called Tenji Blocks. They've been in use since the 60s. They started using them in the school for the blind in Osaka. Thought this was interesting. That's exactly what they are. They're not used for automation. Unlike how we use them here, in Kyoto, they traverse the entire length of the sidewalk. That way, someone who is blind can find their way safely down the sidewalk. Unlike here, you have to, you only get the Tenji block when you get to a curb cut. The rest of it is fair game. However you navigate the sidewalk is however you navigate the sidewalk. And if you've ever been to Atlanta, those are the worst sidewalks I've ever seen someone who is visually impaired have to navigate. Awful sidewalks. There was a stretch of sidewalk near our apartment when we first moved there where the retention wall had actually fallen over, blocked the sidewalk. It had been there so long that plants had started to grow up out of the bricks. So imagine being blind and trying to navigate that type of terrain. I digress. Tenji Blocks. They lead the blind population wherever they need to go safely up and down the streets, even to when they need to cross the street. My wife absolutely fell in love with Japan. Immediately, she was comfortable there. We were both comfortable there, so much to the point to where we actually plan on moving there. You would think that navigating would be rather difficult. But they have smart signs. And what I mean by smart signs, this is what you would think you would see if you were standing on a corner in Japan. But in reality, this is what you see. You have the Japanese characters, which are a combination of kanji and hiragana. Then you have romaji. Romaji are the English letters that allows you, those who do not speak Japanese, to at least pronounce the road correctly so that in any event you get lost, you can actually say where you need to go. This helped my wife out tremendously. I speak Japanese. She does not. She speaks Italian and Spanish. But yet, within a matter of days, she was able to navigate around Kyoto without any problems because of the affordances that the civil designers put into place to allow people to be able to navigate independently. Imagine if everywhere you went, you had to ask for help to get there. Just like the Tenji Blocks. They allow people who are blind to get from point A to point B with minimal effort or minimal assistance from anyone else on the street. Navigation is key for us. We need to be able to get from point A to point B. Food outside, you need to know how to navigate that line, which got chaotic at some point in time. If you're new to this city, you need to know how to navigate to get to the bars. Find your way around. Navigation for us is important. It's even more important inside the applications that we build. How do our users get around through our applications? What type of affordances do we put into place for them to get from point A to point B? Now, for some of us, it's easy. Oh, you just click here and you go here and you do this complete task and you're done. Yeah. Well, how does it work for someone who is very unfamiliar with your product? How do they get through what's their user journey like? How do they get from point A to point B? How can they complete tasks? How extensive is the testing of your navigation patterns inside your application? Do you test the user journeys? Have you even thought about it? This row of Tenji blocks kind of confused me. As you can see, this is my wife standing at the edge of them. It terminates at a big bronze sun that is next to a building. We were on our way to the manga museum and we passed this. The only thing we could think of with that was that these Tenji blocks led people to this sun for a photo op. Because other than that, it's a dead end. What good is a dead end to us in navigation? How do we all feel when we get to dead ends? Frustrated? We did something wrong? Something failed us? We failed it? This wasn't well thought out. And if this was intentional, why? So what I'm going to talk to you today about is freaking keyboard traps and other navigation issues. As he said, my name is Homer Gaines. I am the staff UI engineer for a company called Guru. I'm a certified accessibility specialist. I've been doing this accessibility since 2001. I've been building websites since 1994. This is my second career. My first career, I was a home-based therapist. My background is in engineering, behavioral therapy, with a focus in neurology. I like paying attention to how people use devices, use technology. Human-computer interaction is kind of like my happy place where I geek out. I love being on the front end. That's why it makes accessibility such a good fit. It's fun to do. It's a problem to solve. It is something that I absolutely just love to dive into. But there's a big problem, as we all know. Not all companies prioritize accessibility. Not all teams are able to work on it. Not all devs are even aware that the code that they're writing is not accessible, which goes back to, how do you test? Do you test? What's your navigation like? Bless you. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you in this room could open up some part of your application and start hitting the tab key and run into a dead end. This is a keyboard trap. Not everyone uses applications or our products the way that we think they do. Especially when you think about it. Designers, when they have this nice wide screen in front of them, what do? They design for this nice wide screen. And then you go, well, how does it look on mobile? And you go, oh yeah. Dang, I didn't come up with a mobile UI for this. Oh, great. Well, can't you just use some responsive framework and it works? Be like, yes, you can. But you did not design for what that zero state is at those smaller screens. Nor do we know what it's going to look like on a medium-sized screen, which can also be a problem. We just don't think of these things. So we end up running into these dead ends because we don't think about them. You get someone who starts testing. They test. I hit this dead end. They go back, they come over. It's still a dead end. There's a study that was done that showed that when people use a product for their job, the more issues they have using that product, the more they get frustrated. And the more they get frustrated, the least likely they are to come back to use that tool to complete their job, because it is such an annoying friction point that they just abandon it. Anyone 100% confident that they don't have friction points like this in their application? Good, because I like a fight. I love when people go, oh yeah, our application is 100% accessible. That's a challenge to me. The first thing I do is hit the tab key. When I hit that tab key, that lets me know if you went with an ARIA first approach or a semantic markup approach. And unfortunately, in this day and age, it's usually worse, bad semantics, or the ARIA first approach. But when you get there, what do? How does a person bail out? How do you help the person get around those blocks? A lot of times we don't have solutions because we never even intended for the block to be there in the first place. That's why testing is extremely important. And it's not just automated testing, it's manual testing. Using screen readers. Use your application without the mouse. See how far you get through it. See what happens. How many have heard about the WCAG? I know it was mentioned earlier today in a talk. WCAG 2.1. Legally, you only have to really meet WCAG 2.0, but 2.1 has been around for quite some time that it just makes sense just to aim there. This is the go-to worldwide. There are 70 countries that have some form of an accessibility law on the books. If you are a designer or a developer that lives abroad, but you work for an American company, it's best that you aim here. I worked with this one designer who, guy was talented, then he was amazing, would come up with UI solutions like that. And one day we were having a conversation. I did an accessibility test on his Figma design. And I told him, I said, look, you have several accessibility issues right now that we need to resolve. He was like, why do I need to do this? This is not a problem in my country. I say, yeah, but we're not in your country. The company is here. You're designing for us. And the company can get sued based on what you've designed. His Snapped. I came in the next morning, he had gone through and completely redesigned everything so that it was accessible. I was impressed. I was like, damn, dude, nice. But we have to be mindful. There is a rule. Success criteria 2.1.2, no keyboard traps. What does this number look like? You said low? Low, high, meet in the middle, fight it out. This is actually not a good number for us. There's a company that's called WebAIM. WebAIM does a survey of 1 million websites every year. This is an accessibility survey to show how accessible are the top 1 million websites out there. The numbers are horrible. I think the latest stat is something like 98% of the websites out there have some sort of accessibility issue. Of those 1 million websites, 30,000 of them were built with Vue. Unfortunately, Vue had an increase of 20.9% for accessibility issues. It means we're not paying attention to our code as tight as we need to. We're building in those friction points, those issues that people with disabilities are running into. One of those is navigation. Now, it may seem simple. How do we navigate around? Oh, you use buttons, you use links. Mark Noonan showed a demo earlier today where he had a clickable div and he said sorry to me earlier. Reason being, that is a real practice. How many of you can open up your repo right now and find clickable divs? Yep. Clickable spans. How many can find the incorrect usage of ARIA labels and ARIA attributes on semantic elements that do not natively receive focus? The fact that you even realized that was good. Thank you. Because a lot of people don't even know that. When I do accessibility audits, this is typically where I see these keyboard traps appear. You know, form elements, drop-down menus are the worst because, you know, we can't style for the life of me. I don't know why we can't. Styling a drop-down menu is just a pain in the butt. So we end up doing what? Building a custom component that looks like what the designer designed, and then we have to bake in all the functionality that the browser already does. Well, when we have to do what the browser already does, we introduce errors because we are not thinking about everything that the browser has already baked into it. A lot of times because we don't know everything that goes in there. So then we implement ARIA attributes incorrectly that cause navigation bugs when someone uses a screen reader or even just navigating without a screen reader. But you see drop downs blow up all the time when you don't use a mouse. Another area, inputs. Yeah, inputs seem like they're super simple to code, but yet we still get them wrong. We mislabel them. We'll add attributes to them that make absolutely no sense. How many people use autofocus on your inputs? How many people have tested using autofocus on your inputs to see what happens? Do you know what happens when you use auto input and a screen reader? Yeah. So say, for instance, you have a form, and your form is at the bottom of a bunch of content, and you use autofocus on the first input for that form so that when the user gets to that page, they go right there to that input and can go about their business. Those of us who are sighted, we can glance at the page and see that there's content at the top and then fill out the information as we need to. Easy peasy. Cool. What if you're using a screen reader? Screen reader can't glance like that. The user can't glance if they're visually impaired. So what you've actually effectively done is that you've bypassed all of the context that's at the top of the page and thrown them directly into a form that they have no context of. Doing so creates friction points, elevates frustration, increases errors, and probably results in a service call to your help department. Possibly. So we have to be mindful of things like that. Embedded media players really suck. They really do. Yes, YouTube and other services as such, they've come a long way with building in the accessible controls that are there. But you have some custom controls that are just wonky. You really don't want to have audio playing as soon as a person lands on the page. That'll scare the crap out of everybody. Right? Especially these news outlets. Come on, who told you to set the volume on 100? And it's this little itty bitty video that pops up in the corner and you can't hit the X fast enough. Pain in the butt. Oh, guess what? That's also a keyboard trap. Use your tab key to try to get to that X. A lot of times that X is not a freaking X. It's not a real button, so you can't even get to it with your keyboard unless you have a mouse. So then you just sit there going, F it, I'm out. Luckily, getting off of rogue tabs is easier than getting out of them. Just close it. Third-party widgets, calendars. Oh, yeah. I saw a guy tweet the other day. He said, who out here has had to build a custom calendar component? If you haven't, don't. Don't. The HTML calendar component, the raw one, use that until the wheels fall off. It is accessible, keyboard, mouse, everything. Screen readers love it. As soon as you try to build one on your own, hang it up. It's frustrating. You're going to die. So then we get with semantic markup. This is how we fix things. We fix things starting with semantic markup. So at the beginning of this, I told you how I was super nervous, right? For those of you who have seen me speak before, I've been doing this. I got back in the circuit speaking 5 or 6 years ago, but I've been speaking at conferences since 2003. I have never once done a coding example. I don't do live code. It's bad enough when you're pairing with somebody and you sit there and you just get fat fingered. Then you got a code in front of an audience. Jess, I give it to you because you do some dope demos and I'm almost passing out watching you go through these demos because homegirl will sit up here and build a component in front of you live. And I'm just like, yeah, hell no. Anxiety through the roof. Yeah. So you can blame Pratik for this one. He asked me to do a coding example.
Yeah.
Before I pass out, I no joke. I don't know what made me say, sure. I was confident as hell that day. I think maybe my little boy broke his board at Taekwondo class. So I was like in proud dad moment. And I started thinking about it like, oh, damn it. How do we do this? How do we go about this? And I'm too much of a perfectionist to like, I just can't go half-ass on something. It's just like, I got to build a whole app and make this thing a code. It wasn't until 2 days ago that I was actually able to dial this back and pull it into something that would actually just make sense to demo what keyboard traps look like and how to fix them using Vue. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. How's that looking? Everybody can see that? Do I need to zoom in a little bit? All right. So we have our app. It's running. It's doing its thing. There we go. So right here, we have our buttons. Simple. Looks like a normal navigation that you would get to. I'm hitting the tab key. There's something wrong. I can't get to contact. What? All right. Well, let's look at the code. Nope, that's not it. See? Pratik got me freaking doing fire. Alrighty. So what's up with this? Let's take a look. Our navigation is lines 4 through 6. Stop it. We have a button with a tab index of 0. What's wrong with that? What did you say? Skip to link? Is that what I heard? Skip to main? Don't need it yet. Don't need it. But yes, you're right. There is a skip to main. But what you don't need on a button is a tab index of 0. Buttons are natively focusable. Buttons and links already focusable. So that's one thing we could take out. What are you doing? Son of a... Ha! Take that. All right, so cool. So now, what's going on with the second one? Say that again? Nah, don't need that role. What does that role do anyway? This is what we call over-engineering. When roles are added to elements that have no business being there. All right, so how do we fix line 6? Delete it? Well, if I... Yes, but if I delete it, you can't contact me because, we can't, right, problem solved. Jinx, you two owe each other a Coke. So one, it's a div. As we highlighted earlier, divs are not accessible elements. They don't mean anything to assistive tech. Who cares that you put a click on there? That means that the mouse can access it. But the person who is using a keyboard can't. I can click on this thing all day. But I can't do that. Oh, you saw that, huh? Alrighty, so to fix that, this becomes a button. All right. Hey, we can get there now. Don't celebrate yet. This is where a lot of devs tend to go off the rails because they think that their job is done. We have our modal. Yeah, hey, our modal popped up. Cool. It works. I saw it. My test will pass, yada, yada, yada. So how many have seen something like this happen? Yeah. Where's like, crap. I need you to stay inside the freaking modal. I don't know if you've ever had to write a focus lock by hand, but it stabbed me. Actually, it's between this and building a calendar component, go build a calendar component. So yes, this is my lovely modal. Still can't believe that Pratik talked me into doing this live demo. What in the world was I thinking? Do you have any idea how freaking stressful this is? Where is he? How you said hiding? Yes, exactly. All right, so we're going to close that. So we know that the problem with this modal is we're tabbing all the way through. That's not what we want to happen. I did it again. There it is. Hi, found you. Alrighty. So, actually, let's go back. I use a directive called keyboard trap. It's amazing. It is one of the simplest ways to actually add a focus trap to your UI elements. I found this to be quite painless. In fact, when I wrote this, I did it in 5 minutes and was done. That is the fastest that I've ever been able to implement a keyboard trap, because usually we have to write that keyboard trap manually. And what that does is it means that you are taking an inventory of all the focusable elements within inside the element that you are showing the state is now visible. In this visible state, what focusable elements are in there, and you loop through those until the user triggers the escape. That escape comes in the form of submit, clicks the actual button to get out of there, or you hit the escape key. Don't forget the escape key. That is a valid keyboard function that a lot of people miss. You need to be able to escape out of it because not everyone will hit those buttons. They may have triggered this modal by mistake. And in a panic, the first thing they do is reach for that escape key. All right? So that's one thing to definitely keep in mind. So with this directive, this is a cheat because I just kept it there because I didn't want to have to remember it and type it back in. So before we cycled through, so now I'm going to add it to the dialog that actually pops up. All right, so we can get around. We're here. Now I'm locked in. I can also hit escape and I'm done. Go back around, close this thing, back, close the X button. Simplest way to actually add that in there. And that's it. That's my demo. So what I want you to take away from this is, one, test your applications. Be aware of the fact that you have users who are using your products, your applications, and they do not use it the same way that you do. We do have people who use our applications with a variety of assistive technology. If you can test without your mouse and you can successfully get through your project without using your mouse, your particular feature or whatever it is that you're working on, you're doing great. But test, manually test. If you are running a Windows machine, you can use JAWS or NVDA screen readers. They're perfect. If you're using a Mac, it comes with a screen reader built in. VoiceOver. Use it. The navigation capabilities will change when you have a screen reader active. It changes. Browsers change and interact with screen readers in different ways. The Mac itself will change and interact and allow you to interact with anything on the screen in a different way. It is very important that we have to test. That way we don't create these freaking focus traps and all these other friction points that drive our users and paying customers crazy. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.